In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
So the people there are just not worried about it, Cal? Are they not worried about their own personal safety?
I haven't met anybody who is. I met some folks actually from Lake Geneva who lived in the area. They were staying a few miles outside of town where I were, and they said they're worried about it. They're worried about that second spike. They're worried about folks coming in from Chicago. But they'll quickly add at the same time, this is a place that relies on that business. I think people here want a little bit more funding when it comes to these programs so that they could stay closed. But again, I think people felt like the Supreme Court made the decision here in Wisconsin that it was time to open up. But you can see, here, just around. Nobody's wearing them. Nobody's,
the cameraman.
There you go, including the cameraman. Yeah. Katie?
Half your crew's not wearing.
Striking images, Cal.
If your crew's not wearing a mask. And the CNN lady goes, striking images.
The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
All right, recording deep below the Stigmata Studios bunker, deep in the heart of quarantine zone Charlie in the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. All hail our fearless leader, Governor Egghead. I am John, and this is the Abracast. Maybe another little trigger warning is when I get talking about the media and stuff, I do get rambunctious, and even though I'm sure I'm going to get lost and get rambunctious, that I do understand that people are getting sick and dying over this. I'm not saying that the coronavirus pandemic isn't real. My bone of contention here is just a media examination of it. That's it. So please forgive me if I get a little rowdy. So look, here's your trigger warning, bro. I'm not too interested in this mass culture war that is raging. If I'm at a store with other people and the other people have a mask on, I'll fucking put my mask on because I don't want to freak anybody out. I don't bitch or moan about it. I mean, it's silly either way. But I am aware there is a political component to this. However, this episode is not about politics. This episode is about the media. We've always done these media analysis episodes. The featured topic link is fucking balls deep with media manipulation episodes. I suggest that you check them out if you're interested in this. But this is the first time that we were able to dissect a giant widespread media event like we are all fucking living today. We're able to look at it in real time right now. And this is why, besides the conversation episodes, I've been pretty quiet about COVID-19. Well, that and I felt like we could all do with a COVID-free space. But I need to let some time pass so we can see, so we can get a little context. And I think we have some context now. We definitely have context now. I'm about to get into it. So I'm not going to hammer what it is that I think about mask etiquette. You can probably guess. However, this is about the media. It's not about masks or who's wearing them or who isn't wearing them. So if you might get triggered by this media examination, I apologize. And I gently ask you to skip this episode. We'll get back to, I think we're back to the Crusades on Sunday. So we'll see you there, and have a good weekend, sir or madam. So this episode launched in my brain last week after spending some time on the telephone with my father. Just to add a little perspective about my dad, I've mentioned this before on the show. My old man is a dyed-in-the-wool red, deep, deep red. And I say that like traditionally red, not like our blue and red. He's utopian statist communist. My dad is a Maoist, I think, if I had to fit him in the spectrum somewhere. Anyhow, talking to him about this quarantine, I was actually in a moment of when I'm talking to my dad, rarely do I put myself in a moment of needing a little bit of compassion, but I was telling him that I was sort of fighting this depression and I wanted everything to get moving again. And he went nuts. He fired away. He launched with both barrels of his fear gun. He was like, science, 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 science. And I was like, pow, pow, pow. Oh man, I'm hit. So, not understanding that if it was science, the goalpost wouldn't be moving. If it was science, the modeling wouldn't need to be adjusted every week. We're going to talk about the modeling here in a little bit. They just latched onto this word. It's science, motherfucker. So let's get into this sinister plot, shall we? I do have some featured articles, but I will put these featured articles in the show notes. I didn't put the featured stuff in the thing for the Joe Biden episodes because there's so many videos. I just didn't feel like it, right? So, and I'm just like, hey, I'm just a comic book guy with a podcast. I'm just a writer and an artist with a podcast. If I could find it on YouTube, you could probably find it on YouTube too. Which reminds me, if you're out there and you're generous enough to have a vessel of the art, I'd like for you to raise it to the sky. And thank you to all my Patreon and Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you, guys. Nikki upgraded. She upgraded. She is now a knight in the degree of the vessel of the art. Nikki, your vessel will be going out to you. And if you're listening to this, you need to cancel your Subscribe Star subscription, ma'am. Please, if you're listening to me, just cancel your Subscribe Star subscription, and you've already adjusted on Patreon. So there you go. Also, one other thing coming up on June 3rd is right around the corner. I'm going to be doing my operation, my Water of the Art operation. So I had this need for some water of the art. It's this ceremonial, it's kind of like wizard water. It's dope ass wizard water. So, I'm making a large portion of it in the ritual or the operation or the exorcism or the spell, whatever you want to call it, is going down, this coming Wednesday. And then I'm using the full moon on the 6th to kind of charge the water. And then I'll be trying to figure out the logistics of sending it out to all my $10 Patreon people. So if you're interested in some wizard water, and I mean, like, look, man, this is some real shit. I got, some behind the scenes videos of it available to Patreon people. I'm sure I'll be filming the ritual or the operation. I'll be filming it to post up. And like, I'm ordained through the Universal Church of the Universe or whatever that is. So literally I could just put my hand over some water and be like, God bless this water. And that would work, but it's not. Like, this ritual is like, the last time I was working on it, it's like 26 pages long. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to be reading from the Magus, the celestial intelligence here. And there's, the main body of it, the main portion of it is actually the oomph. The heavy lifting of it is from the Greater Key of Solomon. So if you're interested, you go to abracast.com. There's a link. There's a button that there's a whole portion of the website that'll explain, more about it if you're interested in it. So we're going to start this examination with the best case scenario. And this was written May 27th, a few days ago, by Ananda Mitra. and this was in Forbes magazine. And like I said, this is the best case scenario. This article is called "The Media and Masks, a Confusing Narrative for Americans." So the reason I say that this is the best case scenario, because I'm rolling with the punches that the media is just, they're just accidentally don't have their shit straight. That's why they're providing this shattered sort of narrative. And after this, we're going to transition to a more solidified, with a more concrete kind of pedigree and date on it. And I'm going to explain why this is not, clearly is not an accident that all of this happened. So Ananda Mitras is a professor of communication at Wake Forest University. His research and teachings include media technology, culture, data collection, and data management. The 1968 research on agenda setting by McCombs and Shaw, we've talked all about this in the media effects, in the media manipulation section of the feature topic link. This is it's something like the CNN effect, which we've talked about as well. Is informative in understanding the current debate around the use of masks. Agenda setting theory suggests that media messages influence the public agenda, which in turn can shape behavior. As a lesson for the future, it is useful to note that mainstream media has set a public agenda where Americans are confused and divided about the use of masks. This situation can be especially dangerous since much of America is now going through a phased reopening. A consistent and clear message is urgently needed, which, according to the Center for Disease Control, is wearing face cloth coverings in public settings or other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain, such as grocery stores, pharmacies, and gas stations. Yet the media has convoluted this message and made the masking of America a confusing and decisive issue. So this isn't InfoWars, you guys, bros. This is Forbes, and this is fresh. This is literally, as I'm recording this, fucking came out yesterday. To see how masks have been treated by the media, it is useful to start at the beginning of 2020. Consider how on January 23rd, when the virus was starting to become important to Americans, the New York Times asked the question, do masks block coronavirus? No conclusive answer was offered, and it was just stressed that washing hands and general hygiene would be sufficient to block the virus. This similar perspective was also offered in the 24th by the Seattle Times. Remember, Seattle was one of the hot spots in the early days because an infection got into an old age home up there, and saying public health officials say there is no need to wear face masks in the U.S. Americans were told that masks do not help, and the number of cases in the U.S. were too few to justify the use of masks. In January, Americans understood that there was no need to use masks. Now, usually when I say this kind of stuff, it's because I feel like I got a couple decades on my general listener, but I remember this. I remember when this was happening, where they're like, no mask is needed. And just like everything, I think, is the American people were like one step ahead of everybody. It's like when you look at the track, like the GPS data of everyone walking around, you could find these things online. As you could see that people started initiating their own lockdown before any governor came out and said, hey, we should fucking shelter in place and do all this other kind of stuff. But I remember when they were talking about these masks and they were saying things like, you people don't understand how to use them. Do not go out and get masks. You guys don't understand how to use them. They're pointless if you don't know what you're doing. Boom. This continued in February when the numbers in the U.S. were just starting to go up, and COVID-19 was no longer just a problem for Asia and Europe. Using words of Dr. Fauci, the U.S. News and World Report stated February 17th, skip the mask unless you are contagious. Even though there was no good way of knowing whether one was contagious, the mediated advice was not to use the mask. With the steep increase on the count of infections in the second week of March, Americans were under a national emergency and the mask returned to the forefront. But no clear agenda could be set about the mask. Outlets such as Reuters continued to say that the health officials were discussing whether to recommend the general public wear face masks as a way to prevent transmission of the new coronavirus. But that it was too soon to take that step. The public health officials in America were unsure, but the mediated narrative remained satisfied with merely reporting the confusion without attempting to delve deeper into the matter. In February and March, Americans were confused, not sure what to do about the mask. As the infection and deaths grew exponentially on April 3rd, 5 weeks after their story in February, the U.S. News and World Report reported the U.S. health officials were now saying Americans should cover their faces when they go into public. Granted that this instruction could perhaps have come earlier, it did finally come in unambiguous terms. However, listen to this, put this term in your head, clear direction was not treated unequivocally by the media. Instead, it was treated more as a metaphor for a crisis in a national leadership where health and politics were facing off. Rather than focusing on the fact that Americans should be using masks, the New York Times reported on April 3rd, the Trump administration remains deeply divided over whether to tell Americans to cover their face in public to stop the spread of coronavirus. This media began to split the mask agenda along political lines. This political agenda played out further in a public sphere when the media narrative latches on to the political opportunity offered by images such as that as Vice President Mike Pence going into the Mayo Clinic in April 28 without a mask. A segment of the media used the April 28 event as political capital to accentuate partisan imperatives, while the key message, cover your face and nose in public spaces, gets masked by the ideological squabbling. The politicization of a health agenda continued to be fueled by media commentators who broadcast videos such as the one on 16 May entitled "Masks Are Off," which shows President Donald Trump speaking without a mask while his key health officials stand in the background with masks. Americans are now divided. Some consider the mask a symbol of government intervention, while others see it as the primary defense against COVID-19. In the short history of the pandemic, Americans were never clearly told what science reported on March 28th. That the benefit of the mask comes not from shielding the mouths of the healthy, but from covering the mouths of people already infected. The unambiguous scientific message of the communal responsibility never comes front and center in this media agenda. Wow, he even says it, the media agenda. All right, now we're going to jump backwards in time. Not too far. We're going to jump backwards in time to March 22nd, 2020. We're going to be talking about this white paper called Options for Increasing Adherence to Social Distancing Measures. This was published by a group called the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, also called SAGE. So as we bump around through this document, keep in mind, they talk a lot about social distancing, and I don't believe that they talk about masking. But remember, this is from March 22nd. Fauci didn't come out and start talking about wearing masks until the 3rd. So my presupposition here is that if the SAGE people knew that the mask agenda was coming, they would have made reference to it here. So this document is a sinister document. I'm actually going to put this up on the, I'm going to put this whole thing up on the newsletter for June. I'm just going to kind of bump around through it here. But if you just want to cut to the quick, there's this matrix in the back, and it's awful. Okay, but I'm going to try to bump through the body of this thing here and see if I can dive a little bit deeper than just the matrix. So SAGE is this group. They're in England, and I believe that they work with the what do they call it? The Imperial model. I believe that they were working with the group that did the Imperial model. That's the model that was all fucked up. That was the one where they first started this, and they were like 2 million Americans are going to die from this thing. And they've revised it like every single fucking day since. Just like every model, just back it up, walk it back, walk it back, walk it back. It's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to see a lot more of this in a little while. Okay, options for increasing adherence to social distancing measures. Remember, Fauci didn't start talking about masks until April 3rd. This is dated March 22nd, 2020. Questions addressed: what are the options for increasing adherence to the social distancing measure? This paper addresses the 2 social distancing measures that seem most important at the present. Remember, I said, if they knew the mask business was coming up, it would have been part of this, I think. It's fucking evil. General social distancing by everybody, shielding for vulnerable people for at least 12 weeks. The methodology for evaluating the options is given in Appendix A. The options set out below are not mutually exclusive. In fact, there is evidence that the greatest behavior change impact is achieved by interventions that operate on many levels simultaneously and consistently. There are 9 broad ways of achieving behavioral change. Edward Bernays, your secretary, is calling education, persuasion, incentivification, coercion, enablement, training, restriction, environmental restructuring, and modeling. We have focused on those that are most relevant to this task and where there is evidence to draw on. So let's talk about the first one. General social distancing by everybody. Government guidance. Everyone should try to follow the following measures as much as practicable. Avoid contact with someone who's displaying symptoms of the coronavirus. These symptoms include high temperature and or a new and contagious cough. Continuous cough. Avoid non-essential use of public transport when possible. I wish New York would have read this. Work from home where possible. Your employer should support you to do this. Please refer to the employer guidance for more information. Avoid large and small gatherings in public spaces. Avoid gatherings with friends and family. Keep in touch using remote technology. Use telephone or online services. Okay. All right. So education, specificity. The guidance currently lacks clarity and specificity with regards to the recommended behaviors. For example, instead of the phrase try to, it should just say do. Phrases such as much as practicable, non-essential, significantly limit, and gathering are open to a wide differences in interpretation, and this can lead to the confusion about what exactly people are required to do, like gathering outside or going for walks. Guidance now needs to be reformulated to be behaviorally specific. Who needs to do what precisely and why, and explain the rationale, which they never did. Nobody fucking explained the rationale. I don't care what you say. And communicated through channels that provide personalized advice. All right, so this one's pretty benign. Persuasion. This is it. Perceived threat. substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. It could be that they are reassured by the low death rate in their demographic group, although levels of concern may be rising. Having a good understanding of the risk has been found to be positively associated with the adoption of COVID-19 social distancing measures in Hong Kong. The perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent, using hard-hitting emotional messaging. To be effective, this must also empower people by making clear the actions they can take to reduce the threat. Here's another big one: responsibility to others. There seems to be an insufficient understanding of or feeling of responsibility about people's role in transmitting the infection to others. This may have resulted in part from a messaging around the low level of risk to most people. The truth. And talk about the desirability of building herd immunity. Messaging needs to emphasize and explain the duty to protect others. Positive messaging around actions. People need to see the self-protective actions in a positive terms and feel confident that they will be effective. Individuals also need to understand that the survival of the severely ill will be increased by the capacity of the healthcare system, which in turn will be increased by reducing the rise of infections. Messaging about actions need to be framed positively in terms of protecting oneself and the community, and increase confidence that they will be effective. Tailoring, it is what it sounds like. Some people will be more persuaded by appeals that play by the rules and some of the duty to community and some of personal risk. These are different approaches that are needed. Messaging also needs to take into account for the realities of different people's lives. Messaging needs to take into account the different motivational levers and circumstances of different people. Incentivization. Social approval. Here we go. Social approval. Do you guys see the video of the people yelling at the lady who was at the fucking grocery store and she didn't have a mask on? And they're like pulling down their masks to fucking yell and get angry at the lady. Social approval. Social approval can be a powerful sense of reward. We talked about this in the media manipulation episode. It was called I believe it was called the emotional impact or something like that. It was one of the last ones that we did, so it'll be real close to the top of that section. Not only can this be provided directly by highlighting examples of good practices and providing strong social encouragement and approval in communications, members of the community can be encouraged to provide it to each other. This can have a beneficial spillover effect of promoting special cohesion. Remember, everybody, we're all in it together. Stay safe. Communication strategies should provide social approval for desired behaviors and promote social approval from within the community. Coercion. Compulsion. Experience with UK enforcement legislation such as the compulsory seatbelt use suggests that with adequate preparation, rapid change can be achieved. Some other countries have introduced mandatory self-isolation on a wide scale without evidence of major public unrest, and a large majority of the UK's population appear to be supportive of a more coercive measures. For example, 64% adults in Great Britain said that they would support putting London under lockdown. However, data from Italy and South Korea suggests that for an aggressive protective measures to be effective, special attention should be devoted to those in the population groups that are more at risk. In addition, communities need to be engaged to minimize risk of negative effects. Consideration should be given to enticing legislation with community involvement to compel key social distancing measures. We already kind of talked about this one, the social disapproval. This is all those all the people in the media that are getting called out because it's like they're being in front of the camera and they'll be doing their, no, this person isn't wearing their mask, and look at these people on the beach not wearing their mask. And then as soon as the camera gets turned off, someone videotapes the guy walk down the beach and he takes his fucking mask off. Or like the dipstick we heard in the cold open, where he's like, I haven't met anyone who gives any shit about wearing this mask. And the guy's videotaping him and he's like, including your cameraman and half your crew. And the guy's like, yep, my cameraman's not wearing a mask. It's fucking brilliant. All right. So remember, everybody, we're all in this together, and stay safe and wear a mask. Social disapproval. Social disapproval from one's community can play an important role in preventing antisocial behavior or discouraging failure to enact pro-social behavior. However, this needs to be carefully managed to avoid victimization, scapegoating, and misdirected criticism. It needs to be accompanied by clear messaging and a promotion of a strong collective identity. Consideration should be given to use of social disapproval, but with a strong caveat around unwanted negative consequences.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
All right, and also remember, it's Magician Sticker May still, so anyone who jumps on Patreon at $5 or $10 gets an exclusive Magician card sticker. It's the card I designed for my tarot cards that are now actually available. You can check them out at abracast.com. It's been a long time in the making. I'm really proud of those cards. But the Magician card's awesome. It's got like a screenshot or like a picture of all the cards right there, so you can see what you're getting yourself into. I actually did a little video talking about each septenary in each house of the cards and all this stuff and whatever. And also remember that the Water of the Art operation is coming up on the 3rd. If you want to get into, what can I do to get you into some dope wizard water today? You can go to abracast.com to find out more about that. So the next section here we have is enablement. Community resourcing. People are being asked to give up valued activities and access to resources for an extended period. These need to be compensated for by ensuring that people have access to opportunities for social contact and rewarding activities that can be taken in the home, and to resources such as food. Adequately resourced community infrastructure and mobilization needs to be developed rapidly and with coverage across all communities, reducing inequity. Adherence to these measures is likely to be undermined by perceived inequity and their impact to different sections of the population. Of course, whenever you see this inequity, automatically you're talking about race politics, especially, or class politics, right? Mostly race politics. We'll hear in the States anyways. Especially those who are already disadvantaged, those in rented accommodations and those working in precarious employment, reducing costs of phone calls, data downloads, etc. by responsibility deals or government subsidies should be considered. Evaluation of options for increasing social distancing. Sections of the population who are particularly adversely affected needs to be identified and steps taken to mitigate the adverse impact on their lives. All right, shielding vulnerable people for at least 12 weeks. Government guidance. If you have a vulnerable person living with you, minimize as much as possible the time any vulnerable family members spend in shared spaces. You go through this and okay, here it is. This is good. We haven't really heard a lot about this, but here it is. Shared spaces such as kitchens, bathrooms, and sitting areas, and keep shared spaces well ventilated. I feel like we should be talking about ventilation a lot more than we have been. Aim to keep 2 meters or 3 steps away from vulnerable people you live with and encourage them to sleep in a different bed where possible. If you do share a toilet and a bathroom with a vulnerable person, it is important that you clean them every time you use them. And then they have examples for cleaning, wiping surfaces you've come into contact with. Another tip is to consider drawing up a rotation for bathing with the vulnerable person using the facilities first. If you share a kitchen with a vulnerable person, avoid using, okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, education. Specifically and structuring, the guidance is vague, but it is not behaviorally specific. For example, it uses the phrase as much as possible, which is ambiguous and undermines the message. The phrase aim to is too weak. The guidance should promote action, not aims. Use the term avoid. It's weaker than do not. Key parts of the messaging are missing. For example, say clean and wipe, but it does not state that it is needed to be with disinfectant. It uses the term regularly, but does not specify the situations when this should occur. And it talks about touching the face. When what is crucial to avoid is touching the T-zone, which is the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. So you can touch your cheeks, I guess, whenever you want. The structures can be improved to help people understand what action is needed. Blah, 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 blah. Guidance needs to be behaviorally specific and structured. Who needs to do what, precisely where, and why. Tailoring. Much of the guidance is too contingent on a person's living circumstances. Much of the guidance is contingent on the person's living circumstances, but the tailoring could be clearer so that the people can easily see what applies to them and are distracted by content that is not relevant. Guidance should be structured to make clear which parts are relevant to whom. Okay. Audience. Guidance is directly exclusively to those living with vulnerable people. It needs to be extended to the vulnerable people themselves so that they understand what measure is to be taken. I'm going to skip ahead here. Support. This is complex guidance that is difficult for many people to understand. Remember and follow. Remember and follow. There needs to be more specific information, education, and practical support. This could potentially be done by trained community support volunteers, by targeting media campaigns, social media, and user evaluation of options for increasing social distancing, friendly, interactive apps and websites, community support, targeted media. You will be tracked. Papers, please. Media campaign apps and websites are needed to assist households with vulnerable people to establish new living arrangements and routines to adhere to them. So we're just going to flip back to this we're going to flip to this matrix here in the back, and we're just going to go over some of the. This is just an end cap. We're just summarizing. Provide clear, precise, credible guidance about specific behaviors. Use media to increase sense of personal threat. Use media to increase sense of responsibility to others. Use media to promote positive messaging around actions. Use and promote social approval for desired behaviors. Considering acting legislation to compel required behaviors. Yeah, I think that about says it. Anyhow, I read this and I think it's sinister. Curious to what you have to say about it, though. Am I just being nitpicky? Nitpicky? The next one we're going to talk about here is from May 5th, 2020. It's called, this is right around the time it was a FEMA model got leaked. And the White House was like, whoa, this isn't official. We didn't release this. And we don't agree with what they say. Now listen to the tone of this. And then on top of listening to the tone of it, what I want you really to do is listen to the facts. So this was written in the beginning of May, and it's projecting out to the 1st of June. And it's saying, this is what this leaked document says. And I want you to think about, just over the last few years, what the media has just been wrong about. Well, we'll say wrong. But what I mean is what the media has lied to you about over the last 3 years. And look, not a month has passed. And everything that's written in this is just fucking wrong. Leaked White House document projects COVID-19 deaths will skyrocket. Hey, well, if you're not at work or not on the treadmill or something, and you're interested in what I'm about to read, just Google current COVID-19 numbers and just kind of read along. They have this pretty sweet bar graph, and you can see everything is trending downwards. But you kind of see date to date to date, and you can see what I'm about to talk about here. An internal administration report predicted a grim trajectory, even as the president pushes for the country to reopen. By June, there could be nearly twice as many coronavirus deaths in the U.S. and 8 times as many cases reported as there are today, according to projections from an internal Trump administration document that was obtained by the New York Times. So I got this from some science website. I forgot to jot it down, but it's written by some guy named Yasemin, or maybe some lady, I don't know. Yasemin Saplakoglu, staff writer. I'm sure if you just type in leaked White House documents project COVID-19 deaths will skyrocket, you'll be able to find the source material. Anyhow, they're referencing the New York Times. I believe they also reference CNN. Currently, the country's daily death toll is around 1,750, but by June 1st, it could reach 3,000 daily deaths, according to the projections that are based on models put together by FEMA. The models also predict, this is the big one, the models also predict that by June 1st, the U.S. will log 200,000 new Corona-19 cases every day, compared with about the 25,000 new Corona-19 cases each day concurrently. So that number locks up. If you go to May 5th, you could see that it is about 25,000 a day. But then if you track it out to June 1st, where they're saying it's going to be 200,000 a day, you will see that, June 1st is 2 days from now. We're nowhere near that. We're actually decreasing. Nowhere near it. It's not even in the same fucking ballpark. It's not even the same sport, motherfucker. It's not the same league. It's not the same sport. You know what I'm doing. Despite the grim trajectory laid out by these private projections, which are labeled for official use only, Trump has been pushing for the states to reopen and kickstart the economy. Indeed, despite a growing number of coronavirus cases in states including Texas, Iowa, Tennessee, and Minnesota, governors are easing restrictions, and they're all going to die. On Monday, May 5th, the White House issued a statement saying this was not a White House document, nor has it been presented to the coronavirus task force or gone through interagency vetting. However, it's front page news right here. We're talking about it. I argue with people that still say this number to this day. I'm sure you can find them too. The creator of the model, Justin Lesler, an associate professor of epidemiology at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, said that the modeling wasn't yet complete and unfinished projections, which contain a wide range of possibilities, are shown as a work in progress to the government officials. So let's see if there's anything else. Another influential model from the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, have often cited by the White House, is now projecting that 134,000 people will die from COVID-19 across the country by August 4th, nearly double its previous projections according to CNN. So put that on your calendar. We'll see how that shakes out. And there's just more shit here. These models may serve as billboards, warnings that relaxing social distancing while still riding up the curvy road can lead to devastating outcomes. The U.S. has been social distancing for 7 weeks, but the outbreak is not nearly contained as numbers continue to rise. The U.S. has confirmed 1.18 million COVID-19 cases and more than 68,900 deaths to date, according to the Johns Hopkins virus dashboard. So I should say here, at this very somber tone, that I am having fun with a lot of this stuff, but I do understand that it's important. I do understand that it's serious, and I do understand that people are getting sick and dying, obviously, of course. But I'm pointing out here that the masks, the models, and the media, there's something going on with all of them. So I have like 2 whole other articles, but I'm not gonna, I think that we've spoken enough about this. But there is an interesting article called Sociologists Lead National Survey on the Impact of COVID-19. And this lockdown and this reaction that we've all agreed or disagreed to, is going to be studied for decades. We are going to be trying to figure out what the fuck happened to us for decades. I truly believe that. I truly believe it. And these sociologists are going to be the one doing the studying. So this lady, Beth Redbird, she's the assistant professor of sociology at Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences at Northwestern, is doing a COVID-19 social change survey. And every Sunday, she updates her database. Let me see if I can find that thing. So I think you can search Beth Redbird, or you can go to coronadatu.s. Or you can find this. Article. It was written April 9th, 2020 by Hillary Hurd and Yasso. Anyhow, you can find this lady's website, and every Sunday she updates her database, and she has all these survey questions, and she has them busted down by political party, by gender, by age. And I basically spent the whole day on there yesterday, just going through and just marveling at the different things. So some of the questions they ask are, trust in the government. Trust in me. How much do you trust media? How much do you trust the police? And it literally was interesting. I have it in here in case I ran short. We were going to go through some of them, but I'm going to let you guys go at this point in time. And please, if you made it this far, remember, I did a lot of this stuff, trying to be entertaining. But also want to remind myself and remember that people are getting sick and dying, and that's obviously not a joke. So I'm John. This has been the Abercast, and see you guys in a couple days.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. the price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you can sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.